Call the meeting to order. The Planning Commission meeting of Tuesday, June 19th, 2018. Have a roll call, please.
Yes, Chair John Dinan.
Here.
Vice Chair Robert Ball.
Here.
Commissioner Joan Stewart.
Here.
Commissioner Melissa Hughes.
Here.
And Commissioner Mallory Fenrich. And in the audience, we have Steve Link that is here.
Any Planning Commission member or staff who has a direct conflict of interest on any scheduled agenda item to be considered is to declare their conflict at this time. Hearing none. Public comments. At this time, members of the public may comment on any item not appearing on the agenda and within the subject matter jurisdiction of the Planning Commission Board. Individual comments will be limited to a maximum of 5 minutes per person, and each person may speak once during this time. Time cannot be yielded to another person. Under state law, matters presented during the public comment period cannot be discussed or acted upon. For record purposes, please state your name and city of residence. Please make your comments directly to the Planning Commission Board. Do we have any public comments at this time?
Hello, Commissioners. My name is Rick McGinnis. My city of residence is Riverbank, California.
Welcome.
And just wanted to introduce myself. I work for the Riverbank News. I live here in town, as you know, and at one time I sat at this dais as a council member about 10 years ago. And since the last time I was able to come, except for Joan, everybody's new. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other public comments? Hearing none, we'll move on to number 2, the consent calendar. All items listed on the consent calendar are to be acted upon by a single action of the Planning Commission Board unless otherwise requested by an individual Planning Commission member for special consideration. Otherwise, the recommendations of staff will be accepted and acted upon by roll call vote. Any commissioners have any changes they want to make to the consent calendar? Additions, deletions, directions? Item 2.1, posting of the agenda. The agenda for the June 19th, 2018 Planning Commission meeting was posted on the City Community Center Bulletin Board, City Hall North and South Bulletin Boards, Post Office, City website, and emailed to the library on June 14th, 2018. Item 2.2, approval of the agenda. This provides an opportunity for the Planning Commission or staff to recommend that an item be placed on the agenda for discussion or to adjust the proposed agenda to allow an item to be taken out of order. Do any commissioners want to take action on this item? Item 2.3, approval of the minutes for the April 17th, 2018 and May 15th, 2018 Planning Commission meetings, having been read by the individual commissioners and stands approved as submitted. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission approve the consent calendar by roll call vote. Could we have a vote, please?
I move for approval.
Second.
Aye.
Vice Chair Ball.
Yes.
Commissioner Stewart.
Yes.
Commissioner Hughes.
Yes.
And Commissioner Fenrich. That's approved.
We have no public hearing presentations, and we have 2 Planning Commission workshop presentations. Item 4.1 is food trucks. Donna, it's all yours.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. This topic came up at one of our previous Planning Commission meetings as something that the Commissioners would like to discuss. And there has also been input from some public on talking about our current regulations and what could be done. So I'll provide a brief summary of the current regulations. We've got some example regulations, types of food trucks and events, and then some general plan information. So the Riverbank Municipal Code currently states that no vehicle selling goods may do so without a permit. It states no vehicle selling goods may stop at one location for more than 10 minutes, and there are no exceptions. Other cities, like for example Elk Grove, they put hours of operation on their food trucks. They only require a business license, but they are allowed to stop for 3 hours at a time. They have specific setbacks towards schools and brick and mortar restaurants. They see the restaurants and the cafes sometimes see these food trucks as unfair competition. There are ADA requirements. For example, vendors cannot block path of travel on public or private property. In series, the hours of operation are case by case. It depends on the neighborhood. They're required to have sanitary facilities within 200 feet of the vehicle's location. Normally that means for the employees of the food truck. Permit requirements, they have to have a planning application and permit, and they also have setbacks from schools and other food trucks. The city of Hayward, this example is here because I actually worked for Hayward for a year, and so I'm more familiar with theirs. So they allow permanent parking positions in industrial zones only on private property. You have to have a planning application submitted and approved for a food vendor permit. They regulate the operations, like they require trash receptacles, there has to be restrooms provided. They also regulate the signage through their permitting process. And they do prohibit the food cart type vehicles. They stick strictly to the food trucks.
Donna, they also allow mobile food trucks in Hayward?
No. They just have the stationary ones. So for those in the audience that don't know, this is what a mobile truck looks like. They tend to just pull up, open up shop, fix the food, and then are required to move on within a certain amount of time. Some cities like Hayward have stationary trucks. They're allowed to park. People utilize them throughout those hours. They can have signage, receptacles, covered food areas, like for example in Turlock also. They have a location which has several food trucks that pull up there every single day. They have canopies and picnic tables that don't move. They're just there day in and day out.
Would that be like the ones on Yosemite?
On
The one in
Yosemite.
Yosemite where they've actually got metal
Yes.
covered areas with table. Okay.
Yes, so those people just keep coming back day after day to the same location.
Is that private property?
In Hayward it is. It's required to be on, I'm sorry?
In Turlock, is that private property?
I'm not sure because it's in a parking lot that's right next to a church, but there is an alley between the two. And so I'm not really sure who owns that property. But they do have not only restroom facilities, separate bathroom that the vendors can access. They have a security guard that walks through there the whole time that it's open as well. Hayward also has weekly events where every Monday from 5 to 8, a parade of trucks like this just pulls up in front of City Hall, which you can see in the background there. And they line up, and there's picnic tables and music and a DJ and covered areas for people to sit and visit. And they circulate different trucks through every week. It started out pretty small in a different area of the town, and it really grew on the citizens. And so they moved it here to City Hall, where there's more of an open, grassy location for folks to sit back with their food and listen to the music. There are also permanent sites. This one is in San Francisco. It's a drawing of it. It's a fenced-in area. They have restrooms. They actually serve alcohol there. In the center, they have 10 different televisions, and they hold events like Warrior playoff game watching. I believe that they also include different trucks every week, and let's see. I didn't find, I have a phone call in, but I didn't find out if this was a city purchased piece of property or if it's just a private property, but I can, continue to follow up on that. So in our general plan, there are some goals and policies that are applicable to this workshop. Let me open up my staff report here. So for example, land use policy 4.3, the city will encourage and assist small locally owned businesses that wish to locate, expand, or simply continue to do business in Riverbank through flexible development standards, public investment, property assemblage, incentives, streamlining the entitlement process, public-private partnerships, and other means. We also have economic development policies, such as Riverbank taking a targeted approach to business attraction that focuses on industry sectors that help the city address a tie-in to regional growth opportunities, to address local serving and regional retail market opportunities, and uses that contribute toward a vibrant downtown. So tonight, staff is hoping that you will review all the materials and information that we've presented, open it up to public comment, and then you have some options. You can direct staff to draft an amendment and bring this item back for a public hearing. You can change the scope of the item and bring it back for public hearing or continue it for more information. Or you could table the item if you're not interested in changing the permitting of our food trucks in the city. Thank you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
While you were looking into this, did anything come up, or do you happen to know how do taxes work for food trucks when they're operating in the city?
I do not know. I did contact a group in Sacramento, which is similar to the group in Hayward. And while they are not doing business right now in, Stanislaus County, they are interested in opening up opportunities here. They did check into it and found, besides a health permit, about $211 for a permit to bring them down here. But I can also follow up with them to find out how that business arrangement works.
Joan?
No.
Robert? Mallory?
Not too many questions that I can think of. I think it's a really exciting opportunity to kind of focus excitement downtown, so I'd like to look into that a little more.
Donna, did you get any written comments in response to the notice of this hearing?
I have not, but I did have a phone conversation with is it the Tri-Tippery in Balico, who have recently purchased a food truck and are looking for opportunities to bring that truck to Riverbank and surrounding cities.
I'm familiar with them.
Well, I guess one thing I'd be interested in hearing everybody, including anybody in the public's thoughts on, is just because in general, I mean, unless there's some sort of really bad tax reason not to move forward with it, I think it definitely ties into especially all of the economic development parts of the general plan. So if anyone has any thoughts on what they think the restrictions should be if we do allow food trucks into Riverbank.
Okay, on the policy end, we should hear from the public first before we start coming up with conclusions. So at this point, if there's no objection from the commission, I'll invite the public, members of the public who might want to comment on this issue. Are there any comments? And well, please restrict your comments to 5 minutes and let us know your name and city of residence, please.
My name is Ellen Howard, and I've been a downtown resident for over 50 years. I'm son of fourth generation of Rampart.
Hold on a second. I think your microphone is off.
I'm sorry, can you hear me now? Okay.
I can hear you. That commissioners can.
It's fine.
My name is Ellen Howard, and I've been a downtown resident for over 50 years. My grandparents came
over land, bought land down the street on Topeka, there's a house, that you can find now. I don't know how many of you are really familiar with this, Downtown Pacific Plan and this, what they call it, hypothetical EIR they did. When they did this EIR and this Downtown Pacific Plan, they did it when Ganji wanted to come in and build over there. The problem was they did a focused EIR only on Ganji. They've never done any kind of impact studies, focused EIRs, or anything on the rest of it, especially the residential. My concern is that if you allow these food trucks, that if you don't make it a blanket, whatever you say goes for the whole downtown, because the residential has different needs than the businesses do. And we don't need the impacts for these food trucks. They've tried this before, and it's never worked before, so I don't know if it'll work this time or not. But speaking as a resident, we already have enough problems down there. If you notice on First and Second, there's signs saying no trucks. On First Street, it says keep clear. That's because there's times during the day in eating we can't get out. We can't park. And the last thing we need is a food truck competing with the milk tankers and everything else down here. So I would really urge you that whatever you decide to do, that you take residentials into consideration separate from the businesses.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public? Hearing none, we'll open it up for discussion from commission members. You want to start?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that that's pretty reasonable. The only thing I would not be totally sure of is because I think in terms of residential, we don't really need food trucks like literally on our street outside of a house. But in terms of like maybe a park, like is the park zoned residential or are parks generally zoned something else?
Parks has its own zoning.
Okay. So, I mean, I think moving forward with trying to allow these food trucks, but maybe ban on parking and or being placed in a residential area.
My question to you is, so you're thinking in terms of the mobile trucks coming to the park or having a permanent position in the park?
I'm thinking of mobile.
Mobile?
Yeah.
Joan?
Yeah, I was thinking more about, since downtown needs all the help that it can get, I was wondering if we could actually utilize the plaza in the middle of our downtown. I'm not quite sure how that would work, but I think it has the possibility of bringing people down here, making them familiar with what we have.
Yeah, I think that's really exciting.
Here, microphone.
Yeah, I agree. I'd like to try to see this happen downtown to kind of bring some energy downtown.
Well, one thing that might be interesting to see too is actually this weekend there's a food truck event at Jacob Myers, so literally right outside of our city limits. So if that draws a lot of excitement and things tend to go well at that, it might show that there's definitely a need in the community.
I think right now the majority of anything worth going to is in that little crossroads area. I would think I know I would be excited, and my wife's even mentioned that if we had food trucks, it'd be a great opportunity to go out and eat somewhere that's a little more laid back, less restrictive than a restaurant, more of a family type opportunity to get out. And I think, downtown, I think it's a great idea. I mean, we shouldn't just have the one time a year wine and cheese festival. I think it's an opportunity to bring a lot of energy directly downtown.
Okay, so I'm hearing that there's some support for the mobile trucks, like stopping at parks and other areas where people can sit and eat. And then also the downtown plaza area, maybe something that would be like weekly or a monthly event.
Yeah.
Okay. Was there any interest in finding a permanent location, like in an industrial area on private property, and allowing that type of use?
Do you guys have any recommendation? Is there an area that's gone through any kind of impact studies that would have the traffic to generate the interest on the food trucks to come out?
Well, right now it seems as though, there is one called the Ammo Box located out at the industrial park. That is federal property, and the city is leasing out bays to different businesses out there. There's 40 of them, and they all have to leave the site to get food, except for now the ammo box. And so that area isn't really covered by city regulations yet. But once the Army turns that over to the city, that might be a possible site to have not only the ammo box continue to stay there, but maybe other food trucks as well. And that would serve the east side of the city, where there is very little in the way of restaurants. And
it's a great
I
idea.
have another question. Now, if these areas are zoned industrial, and I'm assuming that the food trucks would have to somehow qualify under commercial, would that be a conflict of the zoning laws?
not if we were to amend the code to add that to the industrial areas as a conditional use or a permitted use, depending on what the Planning Commission and Council would like to see.
So from a perspective of like what we would be able to do, would part of it be that we'd be able to allow food trucks for some sort of event on city property? And then in terms of the industrial areas, would we basically just be amending it to that if someone who owned private property wanted to go into this venture, they could? Because we can't obviously like force someone to put food trucks on their property.
Correct. And really, as far as the parks go, our Park and Recreation Department does have the ability to bring in food trucks for their special events. That would be handled under like a one-time permit for them. But for traveling from like park to park and being able to serve people there, we'd probably have to do something, an amendment to the code to allow that.
I think the property you mentioned before that, where the bays are all at, I think providing that service out there could generate interest in the city fulfilling leases in those spaces out there. I think if you have an opportunity to go out there with much more selection of food, mm-hmm. it might increase desire to be out there.
We don't have, or we won't have 100% total control of that site, as the city has gone out to get a master developer to work on it. But it is something that we could add to the puzzle, to discuss with them about what the city would like to see out there.
One of the things that hasn't come up, the current regulations require the food trucks to move every 10 minutes.
Correct.
Are we interested in amending that regulation or recommending an amendment to that regulation to extend the 10-minute limit to something where you can actually cook a cheeseburger and fries and put it together and give it to a customer?
Yeah, I don't think there's a question we're going to have to amend that if we're going to have an event, especially downtown.
Yeah.
I would suggest 30 minutes.
I'd say at least a couple hours.
Yeah, me too.
Like if we're going to try and catch people to stay here for lunch, then we'd need to cover at least like 11 to 1.
Yeah.
I agree.
I'd like to see us take the path that Series did, where it's kind of a case-by-case basis. Gives us a lot more control based on events, location, time frames, services that they're going to be offering.
I guess the only thing that I would ask on that is when it says case-by-case basis, is that like if the Tri-Tippery was like, I want to do business in Riverbank, is there like a recurring agreement that they can have, or do they need to ask the city every single time they want to come in? Because if they're like, we want to be there every other Monday from 11 to 1, like do they have to repeatedly make that request?
I would think that would be regulations that would be in the draft that staff would come up with as far as outside, because at one point you mentioned local businesses mm-hmm. was one of the guidelines we have, and Balco is, you could call it local, I suppose, or not, depending on how you're feeling that day.
Well, to kind of separate it out, first we could talk about the mobile. That's the one where you would want them to possibly go to city parks and be able to stay mobile. And then that would be the permit that maybe would be an hour or half hour or 3 hours or whatever you choose to assign to that use. As far as, and then once they would get a business license, those conditions would be put in there that you can only go to these 3 parks and you can only stay 2 hours at each park. They wouldn't have to keep reapplying, except for, well, every year you have to apply for a business license, but I wouldn't think that conditions would change unless there were a problem with that business. As far as parking down at the plaza, that could be a 4-hour stint, a 3-hour stint. You know, we could have an alternating list. We could have a company that does all the permitting, and all we have to do is get a business license from them, and they would come and bring the trucks, have them all set up, make sure everything is taken down and clean when they leave. There's a couple different ways of looking at these trucks, you know.
If I'm getting a sense of the board, what we're arriving at is directing staff to come up with an amendment to the ordinance regulating food trucks. Is that a good?
Yeah.
Definitely.
Can I get a motion?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
This is super, apologies for the break in protocol, but is there any way I could make a quick comment?
Certainly.
Okay, thank you.
Our city manager.
Hello, everyone. Sean Scully, city manager. If I were sitting up there, I would be super annoyed with this, so I apologize for that. I was sitting and talking with a couple of members of the public out here, and a couple of them had really interesting points that I think probably weren't thought of until your discussion started, and so I think they're worth mentioning. One is that Evelyn mentioned that there was a time when they did the farmers market downtown, and for a little while at least, it was really successful before every single town in the valley had a farmers market. Perhaps something to think about as you're directing staff to do whatever we're going to do is that maybe there's an opportunity for those kinds of special events, like in the downtown area, to have these food trucks come, because, you know, I know just personally for me, if I could go down to pick up dinner for me and the family and maybe buy a few things, I would probably do that, versus if it was just sort of what it's been, which is really just a farmer's market with a couple of vendors. You know, I probably wouldn't. And so maybe just something to think about. And the second idea was the owners of Kiwi Gun Shop, which is right down the street here, they're a newer business, have a lot that's right next to their property that's vacant, paved, and covered. And they said that if the regulations allowed some sort of temporary or even more permanent allowance to try out those kinds of businesses, they'd be very interested in that. So just want to pass that along.
No, wait, I have a question. Yeah. So you're actually, your first comment, you would combine like the farmer's market with food trucks, bringing the food trucks in during the farmer's market?
Yeah, or any event, really. I mean, like, so for example, a group is interested in doing car show downtown. Well, you know, perhaps that's appropriate. You know, you have a little food. We really only have our pizza restaurant and I think one other option down here. So it's not like there's a ton of brick and mortar businesses that would be affected, although that's been the discussion in the past, just so the commission is aware. Almost in every community, when you have these discussions, there's a problem that usually the brick and mortar businesses that are restaurants that say, hey, look, we've invested in our buildings, we can't move anywhere. We don't really think it's fair that someone could just roll in, make a bunch of money, and then roll out to another location. So you do have those equity concerns, but in our particular case here, we really don't have a ton of those kinds of businesses anyway. So,
thank you.
Thank you, and apologies for that.
Okay.
So I guess in terms of a recommendation, would we be able to kind of just generally suggest that staff come up with a full amendment for us based on a few items that we think are important, or?
Sure, I could take some general directions, excuse me, as far as mobile units utilizing park areas, the plaza area as far as special events or on a weekly or monthly basis. And
I would be very interested in the offer or semi-offer that the Pee Wee Gun Shop has brought up to our city manager, and I'd like to see that explored further.
Truck, I'm there.
so that would be permitting of a stationary truck that would be there on location.
If we could follow up
daily.
on that.
Yeah, I think maybe just allowing any privately owned land, obviously that's not residential zoned, to allow either mobile or permanent fixtures.
That provides opportunity for a lot of our local businesses as well, because if they decide one week they want tacos, next week they want Greek, you know, they can develop partnerships with different food trucks and food styles, and they can serve the community. They can partner with the community to kind of get the trucks that, the community's wanting as well. So they have an opportunity to serve in multiple capacities.
I think we'd want to be very careful that we specify it needs to be on a commercial empty lot. We wouldn't want somebody just popping one of those in an empty lot in a residential area.
Is it commercial and industrial, though?
Yeah.
I was just going to ask that.
Since we have so many pieces of land that seem to be coming up right now that are industrial that don't have 100% locked-in uses, I think this is a great opportunity for those
Good
landowners.
Great.
So we need a motion, and I'll depend on staff, Donna and Janet, to let us know if we're going too far in one direction or another in the wording of the motion.
So
I host poor Melissa.
I would just need to make a motion. It's just
just
agree
direction.
on general direction. And no motion's necessary for this.
All right,
Okay.
thank you.
Because when I draft the language and I bring it to you, you can still pick it apart and massage it.
yeah,
We will
so-
pick it apart. And
On advice of council, a motion is not required. Therefore, do you have the sense of the commission?
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Donna. Item 4.2, downtown specific plan signage. The Planning Commission will have a discussion on signage because some downtown businesses feel the current sign ordinance within the downtown specific plan is too restrictive, allowing them to only have one temporary A-frame or sandwich-type sign directly in front of their business. Are citizens interested in seeing more signage in the downtown? And if so, what type of signage and where? Donna?
Okay. This is something that many cities struggle with. And, we are talking about number of signs, type of signs, location of signs, but not sign content. That's one thing we cannot regulate. I've always wanted to use this format, and it's the first time I've been able to. Okay. So why do we look at signage? We can look at how orderly our downtown can look versus chaos. Our current regulations, the permitted sign types are wall signs, awning and canopy, projected blade, window, marquee, and although we have a section that describes monument signs, somehow the chart that tells where they're permitted, it was omitted. It was left off. So it is something we should take a look at. Okay, A-frame signs. When folks think about A-frame signs, they think of these traditional four-legged signs that sit in front of a business or maybe off-site a little ways.
Behind a car.
Behind a car. Sometimes people get creative with them and they make them look kind of artsy. There's the swinging type of signs, and there's also the A-frame signs where you can change messages. Some cities permit one, some permit both. The projected or blade signs, you tend to see these in a downtown area, normally with an icon or a logo and the name of a business. They can be fairly simple, like these two. Or they can be a little bit fancier to kind of grab your interest. Some of them are actually three-dimensional and with very few words. Wall signs are pretty common, mostly because in the downtown area, you don't have a lot of landscaping to, put your signs in, and so it tends to be on the wall of your business. You have raised letters, signs with exterior lighting, raised letters with exterior lighting, and this one, Ambrosia, is actually painted on the wall. Awning signs. Some cities allow you to put your whole name on the awning, like these two examples. Others only want you to put the name on the edge to keep it Just a little bit more discreet. Neon sign district. Some cities do have a neon sign district to try to bring people downtown for their nightlife. They can be simple signs that really require very few words to know what's going on inside the building. Window signs are allowed in our downtown area. You can have something discreet that is fairly minimal, but it tells you exactly what's inside the business. Even larger logos. Now, when we think of marquee signs, some people always just think of theaters, the bright lights, but we're actually referring to the type of lighting. So as far as marquee signs go, these are also marquee signs. I mentioned monument signs, so we do have some regulations for monument signs, but it was omitted from the permitted sign list. There's a traditional city sign. Businesses can have fairly small signs that attract them to their business. Multi-company signs like these are fairly common. So with our current regulations, these are the prohibited sign types. Nothing that's pole mounted. Off-site commercial uses on non-contiguous parcels is currently prohibited. So if, say, Pizza Plus were to take a sign down there to Highway 108, that's currently not permitted. Billboards, flags and bunting, and human signs, the ones that are this kind of spinners that the guys on the corners use. And then any sandwich board signs or A-frame signs which block pedestrian access. Okay, so this is what a pole sign traditionally looks like on the left and a billboard on the right. They can be on top of buildings as well as being freestanding. This one's got a little graphic on it there, three-dimensional. This one's overkill. 200 meters to McDonald's, and then a little bit farther, 197 meters to McDonald's. These are the bunting that they talk about and the flag signs. There's an A-frame sign or sandwich board that's actually blocking the crosswalk. There's one of our human signs I mentioned. Those tend to be off-site as well. What can happen when signs go bad? Fred's Auto seems pretty simple, but if you had 5 or 6 buildings in a row with equally large signage, it may not attract you to Fred's Auto anymore because there's so many signs the similar size to draw your attention. Now this one here, this one lists their name in 3 different locations, which does seem a little bit like overkill. We have the neon signs can draw you in, but they can be overused. They can also bring messages which you can't control. This seems like overkill too. I mean, we know this person sells mattresses. Do they really need to tell us 8 times? As far as window signs go, they can get pretty complicated too. If you're walking down the sidewalk, it's hard to focus on what exactly is in this business here. Sometimes cities allow businesses to advertise what they sell, not necessarily just their name and logo. Sometimes signs stop working and you get a different message than you originally intended. And sometimes they just get too many in one location. One thing we haven't talked about is portable signs. That isn't addressed in our code right now. As far as the electronic signs, we do allow them in the downtown if they're done tastefully and they're on the building and match part of the architecture. But I do know that the Park and Rec Department is really interested in getting an electronic sign possibly on the edge of the city. There's a possibility that with advertising our city events, we could also advertise downtown businesses, maybe a 5-second blurb of, a flash of their name and their logo, and then end with, please come downtown and try our businesses. That might be an option to consider. We had talked about mobile food trucks earlier. What type of signs would they be allowed to have if we have permanent locations? Or even if they come down for a special event, would we allow them to put A-frame signs on the sidewalk or these flag signs in the landscaping? It's more to consider. So you could, think of signs being regulated as allowing some order to the downtown. Or if you don't have sign regulations, things could look like chaos as well. So you have some options here. You could direct staff to bring back an amendment for public hearing. It can change the scope of the item. Say, for example, if you don't want to do a complete overhaul of the sign ordinance and want to focus on 1 or 2 signs or add a sign, we could do that, bring it back for more discussion. Or we could table the item if you're content with the way the sign ordinance is right now. I found all these neat buttons. Thank you.
Thank you, Donna. Any questions from commission members? I had a question. What type of input brought this to the forefront? Were there many businesses coming to you requesting we look at this, or one, or?
About a year ago, maybe 2, there was a business in the downtown that was in code enforcement. We got to the point where they were taking their signs up to Highway 108 and chaining them to the poles, so staff couldn't remove them. Kind of worked that out, but recently we have had another business downtown who has been utilizing some A-frame signs around town on the weekends, and there's been at least 2 complaints that we've received about those type of signs. The business felt that the signs were bringing them a bit of business, and that when they pulled back on their use of the signs, it was an economic impact to their business. And so that is kind of the impetus for moving forward, to see not only do we want to talk about the electronic sign that the city could use for our events and to bring business downtown, but individual businesses. Is there something we can do to help them advertise their business and bring more people to the downtown?
So we're talking about the downtown specific plan.
Correct.
And what is the southern border of that plan area?
The southern border, it's Patterson Road to 108 to 4th Street, and then on Callender and just right at the curve.
Okay, so Patterson, including the south side of Patterson.
The north side of Patterson.
Okay. Okay, if there's no further comments from the commissioners, I'd like to open it up for a public hearing. Is there anyone that would like to address the commission on this subject? And please state your name and city of residence.
Good evening. My name is Pete DeMattis. I'm actually a resident of Modesto, but myself and Lyndon Yates, who is a resident of Riverbank, own and operate Kiwi's Custom Guns downtown on Santa Fe Street. We're one of the businesses that utilizes these signs to bring foot traffic to our area. We've only been open in downtown since September. If you are literally anywhere outside of downtown in any other parts of Riverbank, there is nothing that says come to downtown. And so that definitely does, pose a problem for us as a downtown business, does for Pizza Plus, for anybody. So we would like to work with the city to figure out, different ways that we can help. It's not just about us. I mean, obviously we want to promote our business and we want to drive traffic down to downtown, but we also want to help drive traffic downtown. And we want to be, we want to participate in any ideas, any suggestions. We've talked to different city council members about, hey, let's pitch in and put a sign somewhere on 108 that says, hey, come downtown and see Pizza Plus, or, whatever, just come downtown and see what we have to offer. And, Crossroads, there's tons of foot traffic at Crossroads, and there's got to be some place there, an orchard, someone that's willing to put, a sign that, hey, the businesses can contribute towards to help, develop and design and put up to advertise to drive some of that traffic downtown. So to us, it's important for our business, but I think it's important for the overall downtown area. And we don't want to be a problem for the city. We want to help the city. We want to contribute. And but then again, we need to be able to have people come down to our businesses. So I just wanted to let you guys know that we are open for any kind of suggestions. We want to contribute to that. And the signage is a big thing, and I'm glad that we're talking about it now. And there's a lot of those A-frame signs out there throughout the city that are not just ours, and they continue to be put out there. That's one of the things that is a little bit frustrating on our part, is that we've taken down our signs, and there are a lot of signs out there that are still being displayed. And I mean, I don't want to just go put our sign next to their signs, because that's not the type of business, type people we want to be. We want to be part of the community. We want to help our business. We want to help the downtown. So I like the fact that there's this workshop, and we look forward to working with you guys to help put something together that helps everybody. So thank you. Thank you.
Any other public comment?
Like I said, I've been a 50-year resident here. Downtown is our historical area. There are buildings down here, several of them that are 100 years old or more. I think when you do these signs, you have to take into consideration, this is not a strip mall, it's historical, and those signs need to blend in and fit. That's what this signage thing did to begin with when they did it. It needs to blend in with our historical downtown. This is where everything started. Ours, the sandwich signs, the one on First Street, it's either on the sidewalk or it's on somebody's property, but that's somebody else's property. It advertises guns. Now, I don't have a problem with guns. I mean, the Constitution gives you the right to have one, yada, yada. But I have a problem when it's across the street from the skate park and all those kids and teenagers giving what's going on today. I think maybe you need to look at what they advertise, because you don't advertise alcohol or cigarettes at a place where kids congregate, but you're advertising guns. And if you allow that, are you opening it up for the marijuana shops to do that same thing? I think that could, bring out some other issues. And I really don't think those signs belong down there by the residential neighborhoods anyway. 108 is probably where you can get the most traffic. But I really encourage you to take into consideration the historical part of this. And not, because we're not a strip mall. We don't need big old neon signs on that kind of stuff.
Thank you.
Sean Scully, Riverbank. Just wanted to express to the commission what I hear from a lot of the city council regarding this specific issue, which is really tough because one of the things that we're always talking about, and it's not just us, it's every little town in the Central Valley. What do we do about our downtown? What about our downtown? How are we going to make our downtown like it was in 1972? And my response to them is always, that's not ever going to happen. The retail landscape has changed. The types of businesses that can still survive in that landscape are not coming downtown, except for some of these kind of boutique uses, these very special, specific kinds of things. And so one of the things that we discuss a lot is if you as it stands today, just because of the geography of Riverbank, if you own a business downtown, you're at a disadvantage in a lot of ways to nearly every other commercial area in Riverbank. So if you're on 108, you get all of those thousands of cars and eyeballs passing you every day long. If you're down in Crossroads, that's a whole nother deal. I mean, there's, all kinds of traffic down there. It's built and designed for that. This was built, nearly 100 years ago, and so it wasn't thought of in that way of, what's things going to look like in 100 years, and are we going to be able to have the representation downtown anymore? So my general comment is just that I think that it's appropriate to at least have the discussion and discuss what kinds of things can we do to give a leg up to the downtown, because otherwise it's not reasonable in my mind, for a business. Let's take oh shoot, I don't know who I want to pick on, but let's just pick on any retail establishment along Highway 108. They don't really need to do a whole lot to get a business, because they're going to be seen, right? So the question for the commission is, what can you do that's fair, that's going to look nice, that's not out of control, like Donna said, no one wants that, that gives these businesses a little extra leg up to sort of even the playing field a little bit, and maybe hopefully help them draw a few more businesses downtown. Sometimes, in previous jobs, some of the things I've recommended are some allowance for off-site signage, maybe limiting number and size, maybe, we want to keep them out of the public right-of-way. That's nothing that we ever are going to want, just from a city perspective. But, what if directional signage is allowed within a certain radius of the downtown, so that people at least know, oh, there's a shop over there that I could go check out. The thing that Evelyn mentioned, Evelyn and I talk a lot. We agree and disagree a lot. One of the things I would also just caution you about, I'm sure the city attorney will mention, is we really got to be careful about legislating content. That's not our business. There's rights that, if it's a legal entity and a legal type business, we want to be careful about that as well. So just those general comments, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Any comments from the commission?
I have some thoughts here. I think we can save a historical group of houses and watch our downtown die, and I don't think that we want that. And I'm wondering if there's a way that we can kind of flex that off-site thing. Could we just not decide that the downtown specific area is the site, and that the borders on either side of that designated area could therefore have some signs, at least maybe tasteful signs, perhaps historic in nature, that would say, take this street for Pizza Plus or the gun shop, or list the variety of services that are there, and then perhaps have signs that are similar in nature, identifying these various shops. But we have to get the people to come into our downtown so that they can actually patronize some of these businesses. We need to draw attention to our downtown.
Question. So in your vision, were you thinking of the electronic sign that I'd mentioned earlier, or were you thinking, like the city manager had mentioned, maybe allowing them each to have one off-site sign?
I'm thinking about the large sign on the corner of Crossroads that shows all the different business establishments that are there. Perhaps something more the turn-of-the-century type sign that also would list all the businesses that are available in our downtown, so that people going down that highway know what's available in our downtown.
So first of all, it kind of seems like the only real issue that downtown businesses are having right now in terms of our signage laws is off-site signage. So it doesn't sound like any of the complaints that have been brought forward were about the actual signs on their building. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
I know, living by Crossroads, I see those signs 100 times a day. I've seen the Kiwi signs, and being an avid shooter, I've noticed those signs. And I would have never known. I couldn't tell you a handful of businesses that exist downtown. If you don't go, walking down the street or driving, and craning your head around, you don't know. I think that we need to do something to increase the economic footprint downtown, to let people know there's more than just Crossroads or 108. Because driving down 108 is a zoo, you see everything. But I think that we have a lot of opportunity with the businesses, our local businesses downtown, that we need to partner with to help them be successful here. What that looks like, I don't know.
Is there a way that we could have a brainstorming session, just invite all of the merchants from downtown and meet with us, perhaps even the city council, and just actually brainstorm, toss the ideas around?
I think that's part of what we're doing here.
That's what this workshop is about, to try to get people in to brainstorm, to find out, even though we only had 1 or 2 complaints and it's only on a specific type of signage, if we're going to amend the downtown specific plan, you just as well look at all the different types of signs, unless you're content with what we have already.
Mallory?
Yeah, I appreciate City Manager Scully's opinions and thoughts. The downtown is a special case, and being a planner, I know we're not always for more and more off-site signage. But Riverbank's downtown is a special case, and we want to help you guys. And I see your signs, and I wouldn't know your shop was there if that sign wasn't there. So so I'd like to look at amending kind of special rules, kind of what Mr. Scully was kind of getting to. So
I'm sorry.
One of my personal goals, and whatever I can do for this city, would be to see downtown be invigorated. I do spend some time in Turlock. They've got a thriving downtown, but they're a college town. But I believe if you want downtown to thrive, you've got to have something downtown that draws the general population. The gun shop will draw a certain population. The pizza place, that's one place that more general population will go to. But a brewery, don't have enough knowledge to even give a suggestion. But I see signage, tasteful signage saying downtown or historic downtown. That's what Turlock calls themselves. They're historic downtown. That I could support, but not neon signs or electric signs, that's my personal opinion.
Yeah. Kind of a limited expansion of rules for downtown businesses, I would say.
The reason why the electronic sign came up through Parks and Rec is that there's actually a company that will come and install the signs, and basically at no cost to the city. But you do need to find a piece of property that's city-owned to place it on. I think Joan's idea is good as far as keeping things historic, maybe have it blend in with the architecture, maybe not be electronic. But then I think we run into the same problem, is that you need a piece of property to put that signage on, and it probably has to be city-owned. And then, how big and how many? I mean, if it does start to draw people downtown, which we would love to have, and more shops and businesses opening up, then how do you decide who can be on that sign? Or do you have 10 signs to accommodate all the new businesses?
How did they do it in Crossroads?
Well, at Crossroads is a shopping center. They can have the big pylon signs with a lot of different businesses listed.
I'm just trying to think,
site.
In Modesto, I know I've seen some sandwiches. I don't know if that's against their regulations, but I don't believe they don't have any sort of centralized sign, do they? Does anyone know?
Other than the big arch, I suppose.
Yeah.
It's not really downtown.
Modesto J Street seems to be their downtown. Like we were talking about a downtown with various shops.
Modesto's kind of a thoroughfare, like Turlock's has a thoroughfare. Downtown Riverbank's like the middle kid.
Yeah.
We've got 108, little kid, and then there's downtown and there's Crossroads. So what aside from the A-frame signs, so those are not allowed, like, just as an example, because it came up, like the Kiwi signs. That's against the general plan to have those out, like along square wells?
Well, it's against the specific plan. He would be allowed to have one A-frame sign on the property in front of his business, not at Crossroads, not down the street. That's all our code allows for him right now. You will see other A-frame signs around, but we operate our code enforcement on a complaint basis. So if nobody complains about them, we don't have really the time or the staff to go after everybody.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, it's okay. Go ahead.
I was thinking, since we're looking at the downtown specific plan, then obviously if we're just doing downtown plan, that doesn't include putting signs in any of these other areas. And I personally definitely don't like the idea of putting them in a residential area if we were to look at that. I mean, I definitely want to do anything to encourage businesses to go into the downtown and be as friendly to them as possible. Obviously not at the expense of making downtown look worse. So, I mean, looking at doing something where we would allow, I think the electronic sign is a good idea. I think that would be a good way to both promote the city and events that we're doing with Parks and Rec as well as businesses. And I don't know how that would work, but potentially bringing in some city funds too, which I'm also for. And then looking at some sort of arrangement, whether it be like a certain number. I don't think we need like tons and tons of signage out on the street, but definitely allowing someone to have a presence on the busier street, I think is a good idea, but at a limited basis. And obviously, if we had like some sort of theme of what those signs look like too.
Yeah.
I mean, if you were to put one just there at Clarabelle and Square Wells, the amount of traffic, and I say that because Oakdale's too fast. Oakdale's too fast, 108's too fast. The traffic there at the T at Square Wells, a business having a sign right there would be astronomical. Your visual take-in of that every day would be so far-reaching versus an A-frame outside of a store or a business just on a downtown block.
I have a couple of questions. This electronic sign that Park and Rex is talking about, will we be asked for a recommendation on that, or is that outside of our scope?
Well, if the recommendation would be as far as amending the downtown specific plan to allow that sign.
Okay.
Once, if you did allow it, then it would be an application process similar to what we have now, where somebody would come in with plans for a sign, and planning and building would review it, and they would get building permits and move forward. It wouldn't be something that would require a use permit through the Planning Commission.
But it would be in the downtown specific plan area.
Correct. And it could be limited to, only a civic use could apply for it, possibly.
And I have a question for the folks with the Kiwi Gun Shop. Have you done a study on where your customers are finding out about you?
Can you come up to the microphone?
I'd say that when we have put the signs off 108, we almost always get several people a day that come in there when those signs are out. We used to have we put a little cardboard temporary sign up out by that Squire Wells and Oakdale by the Home Depot. It's tons of traffic for that. We thought about putting one on that corner where you turn left or right, to the extent where I was going to find out who owned that property and ask if we could pay to put a sign there. But that would be a great spot for a community, sign or something promoting downtown. So it's literally where those traffic areas are.
The one problem with that is the empty spot between Home Depot and Clarabelle, underneath the Hetchy lines, is actually a private piece of property. which has been sold once recently and is for sale again. But it is a piece of private property. The city does not own that.
Any other input from the commission? I haven't got a sense of any direction for staff. Do we want staff to go and draft an
Can we
amendment?
see our choices again?
Absolutely. Oh. Let's see. You want to go past the chaos, I'm guessing.
Those look like downtown San Francisco.
I think they might have been.
No, not that. I mean, our selections for what we want to recommend.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let's go back
One
to
of them
that.
was draft an amendment, one was change the scope of what's been
Here we go.
presented, and the other was the table. The whole
If you have
project.
something particular in mind, like if you just want to focus on A-frames, or if you want to focus on electronic, I could draft an amendment and bring it back for you for public hearing. If you would like more examples brought back, and you would like more discussion, maybe more outreach, we could do that. Or if you're happy with the way things are, we could table the item.
Okay, I'd like to go with number 2. I think we need more discussion.
I second that.
Well, we have a motion on the table.
If you could clarify a little bit more.
Our attorney is going, no, we don't need a motion. And there's tears coming down his cheeks. What did I tell you before?
So is there one or more types of sign you want to focus on, or do you just want suggestions on the various types of signage?
Well, for this electronic sign, if we're trying to do it as a city, would we be able to like put that amendment in place so that then Parks and Rec would have an easier time in putting in one of those signs? Or also, like, are we saying that maybe an individual business would want to put a sign somewhere?
I think what we're looking at is the possibility of the city putting a sign that maybe could be used, well, not, I wouldn't say used by the businesses, but advertise the downtown businesses. So that would be a matter of, do you want to have it as a permitted use for the city? I can't even talk today, sorry. For the city, is it permitted or not permitted is what we're looking at there.
Gotcha. So, I mean, the only thing that is kind of bothering me is that we're talking about downtown specific plan, but then all these other areas that are not in the downtown area are coming up. So I wouldn't want to necessarily go after all of those at once. So if we were talking about just the downtown specific plan as like a step 1, and like, can people have signage outside of their own property but still within the downtown city limits, then maybe we like do this in pieces, because I think looking at like, random parcels of land throughout the city is kind of a lot.
Well, those other lots throughout the city that you're talking about are actually regulated underneath the municipal code. We have a separate sign section for them. And that's something we can look at in the future.
It seems to me that what's going to draw people downtown, like Robert was saying, is signage down in the crossroads, because that's where the people are. And if you want to get people downtown, you're going to have to advertise in crossroads.
Well, I guess,
And that's,
I don't know how that would work, but how would the owners of the
Yeah.
land at Crossroads feel about that? I mean, as much as we want to revitalize the downtown, I don't think doing anything against Crossroads is necessarily in our best interest as
But
well.
Crossroads is more chain businesses, versus downtown is very specific businesses. They're not franchises. I think they're very different business entities. Obviously, Crossroads is successful. Our goal, I think, is to help downtown be successful as well. Is there any land that could be used over in that area?
well, that's something we'd have to look at, because actually the crossroads area, the residential, the commercial, that would include the Home Depot side, actually has its own specific plan. So we would have to look at probably at doing an amendment to that plan, should they be agreeable to it.
I would definitely like to look at what those specific plans are in these high value areas that we're talking about. So around Crossroads, and then specifically at that intersection that seems to be of interest, maybe in a future discussion.
I think maybe just as, like you said, step 1, I'd just like to see an expansion of rules for A-frame signs specifically for downtown businesses to be located on the outskirts of downtown, just as an amendment to the downtown specific plan.
One or more per business?
I said, well, I imagine one right in front of their business and then the one off-site, or more off-site, I guess I should say.
What I was thinking, north, south, east, west.
So you're thinking 4 besides the one they're currently allowed to have?
Or, something strategic, whether it be, depending on where they're at, depending on what their business is, what their model is, maybe one on 108, maybe one off in the Crossroads area, one, depending on the business again, off of First Street.
The only problem is all of those different areas are in different specific plans.
Right.
So we'd have to amend it within each of the specific plans. Is that correct? So we can't really say like.
Right,
for
we have the
anywhere in
downtown
city.
specific plan, we have the Crossroads specific plan, and then the rest of the city is regulated by the municipal code.
Gotcha.
I support Mallory's recommendation to staff.
Yeah,
and would
just to
hope that
start there.
Staff has the flexibility to come up with options.
Yeah,
The
I would
two
say
for-
look at
Yeah, we need to
expanding within downtown, and then maybe as another workshop discussion item, we take a look at the Crossroads specific plan in terms of signage, so that we can see what we think if there's room to change that.
Right, we need a lot more discussion on this.
Yeah.
Okay, so you want me to bring back a draft ordinance for more discussion? Not necessarily for adoption, but so you can look at it and bring more ideas.
Turning signage within the downtown specific plan area.
Yeah, I think maybe we're ready to move forward with an actual draft of an ordinance for just downtown, but then maybe we also have a further discussion outside of an ordinance similar to this setup in terms of looking at Crossroads.
Okay, so you want more discussion, but then also a resolution that would address the electronic signs and one off-site sign
I didn't think.
per
we were gonna-
business? No.
No, we're not
No.
lumping
No,
the
we're not
electronic
lumping it.
sign in with this. This is strictly.
Okay.
I think we're basically just trying to separate, like, because what I saw, the original conversation was, can a downtown business have another sign, but within the downtown specific plan area? So I think for that one, we're probably ready to move forward with actually looking at drafting an ordinance and bringing it back to the table. But I think what we wanted to do, at least what I would like to do, and before even considering expanding that beyond the downtown specific plan, is take a look at what the Crossroads specific plan says on signs specifically.
Okay.
And I have the entrance right there on calendar where the fountain is. The city owns that land, right? That city land?
I believe so. We're right where the fountain is, yes.
Yeah. If nothing else, we could have a sign there, small, discreet, alerting people that there's a vibrant downtown where they would love to do business with them.
So a general sign, not one specifically for a business.
Just whatever, just alerting people that I can tell you between now and next month, I'm going to be doing at a heck of a lot of signs in a lot of little different cities around here to see what's out there, because I've really never thought about it before. I do know that the businesses in downtown need more and better.
Representation.
There you go.
Yeah. Well, the one thing I'm just thinking of too, because when I think like good downtowns too, I think Lodi Livermore. And Livermore's downtown is obviously not in a major thoroughfare, but they did a lot more work of just revitalizing the downtown, and I don't think they necessarily have any signs. It's just, it became an attraction. Because that's
Yeah.
kind of what I'm thinking is, I think it'll make a small difference, but in terms of increasing the business downtown, we just have to make downtown a better place to be.
Yeah, I see this updated sign ordinance is kind of like a temporary Band-Aid, I suppose, before downtown's really a happening place, I guess. So, yeah, signs don't make a downtown. It's downtown makes a downtown, but it'll help us a little bit. So,
Are you clear, Donna?
I think so. I think so. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Planning Commission comments. Any commissioners have comments they want to share?
I'm so glad we're getting more code enforcement people on board, Donna.
Any other comments? Hearing none. County referral correspondence or information? Hearing none. Staff comments? Item 7.1, May 22nd and June 12th, City Council meeting updates.
Okay, in our May Planning Commission meeting, we talked about height and setback regulations for skate ramps. I then took that information to the City Council, and while it was discussed, they decided to continue it a month for more thought, more discussion on whether they thought that was appropriate direction to go. At the June 12th meeting, as we've discussed, I was given direction to recruit for a part-time neighborhood improvement officer who will focus on AVA, which is abandoned vehicles abatement, and working with the cannabis permits that have started to come in. Let's see, and I would also like to share that Crossroads West specific plan and its EIR are on the city's website, out for public comment right now. The comment period ends August 2nd, 2018. So if you have the opportunity to go online and pull up those documents, planning would be happy to take in your comments and move this project along. For those of you who may not know, the Crossroads West site is from Oakdale Road on the east, Clarabelle on the south, partway to Coffee on the west, and Patterson Road on the north. No, I'm sorry, the Cadell up there.
Canal.
Morel, I'm sorry, Morel. I'm getting too excited here. So, we're looking at 56 or 58 acres of commercial uses, similar to, but not competing with, what's at Crossroads right now, and approximately 2,000 plus housing units. Also looking at a couple of school sites and a fire station site there as well. So, yes.
Donna, going back to the issue of the skate ramps and everything, I know at the one meeting in May, they postponed it till the next meeting, but then it wasn't on the agenda for the next meeting. Where is it? Is it floating around somewhere, or is the answer the half person that we're hiring?
For the skate ramps?
For the skate ramp issue, right.
Right. That is going to be at the the first meeting in July for the City Council was canceled, and so it's the second meeting in July. I believe that's the 24th, July 24th. I will be bringing that item back to them.
Okay, thank you.
Now, is that item closed going to them, or is it still open for discussion?
Still open for public comment.
Because something got brought up to me in discussion that we never considered, and that was some kind of a soundproofing of the actual wood to soften that neighboring noise. So maybe insulating the back of the wood.
And that's why I brought up the height of the trees. If there's a problem with them being looked at, couldn't they plant some trees to block the view?
Yeah, I think a lot of it was the sound, though, as well.
Right. Well, those are items that can be enforced under a conditional use permit. Because they would be on a case-by-case basis as to, how many trees, what type of trees. It may depend on the type of ramps they have, whether or not if they need the soundproofing.
And of course, it's a suggestion to the homeowners. It's not something I think the city should mandate.
Now, was the homeowner under agreement that there would be no continued building until council agreed on a definitive direction?
The homeowner that kind of was at issue that brought this whole item forward did sign an agreement that he realized his home occupation was not a permitted use. The sawing and hammering and cabinet making all kind of flowed together there. So he agreed that he would not have a home occupation and that he wanted to continue his hobby. And so the city council suggested or determined that possibly he could make a ramp, skate ramp, maybe 1 1/4. But he was not should not be able to sell them as a business. And he had agreed and stated that sometimes he would build a skate ramp for himself, use it for a while, and then maybe get rid of it so he could build something more interesting for himself. So that's kind of where we have it now. He's allowed to build a couple a year, but not to have a business.
Any other comments or questions from the commissioners? Thank you all very much. Meeting is adjourned.
Until July 17th, 2018, our next
Thank you.
meeting. That's talking, but, any input you can give on what we can